to get that ship ready for sinking was a daunting task. There were so many different things that brought that ship to that one place just to see this thing before it went boom.
It's definitely a safety precaution to have a team like this to go inside and look at the wreck, because if ordnance has not been exploded and we cannot verify that from the outside, then we've got a live explosive underwater. And a concussion like the type of explosives being used to bring this ship to the bottom could definitely hurt somebody.
Joe Wejebe sinks ships. That's what he does. He runs Reef Makers of the Keys, and he picked the Vandenberg in 1996 out of 400 different potential ships to sink here in the Keys. The first time I saw the ship, I was running out to the Gulf with a group of artist fishermen, and I saw this massive ship being towed by a tugboat. So we stopped for a little bit and took a look at it as it was being towed into Key West Harbor. And it wasn't until I got back from that trip and spent some time on the computer and researching it that, that turned out to be the Vandenberg.
The Vandenberg is a 522-foot missile tracker that was based for 30 years out of Patrick Air Force Base, a Florida ship. And she was a frontline Cold Warrior, tracking Russian missiles up in the Bering Sea and in lots of faraway places. The ship's now here in Key West, Florida, in our backyard, and we're going to be sinking her here as an artificial reef.
In my conversations with Joe, he really picked that ship because of many different reasons, one of which was the history of that ship. The USS Hoyt Vandenberg has served a long and illustrious career. It started as a troop transport, commissioned in 1944. It served in both theaters of the war. It served as a humanitarian vessel carrying political refugees seeking asylum back to the U.S. It had a stint as a spy, tracking Soviet missiles during the Cold War. It has become a historic landmark, right? So not only does it provide a lot of information about the past of that ship and American history, but it's also a huge boost to the local economy of the Keys.
I think that diving and fishing the Vandenberg out here in Key West is an experience that'll be unique in the world, and it'll be that way for 100 years. The cool part about it is you never have to mow the lawn or shovel the snow. Once it's down there, it just gets better and better. There's a real magical transformation that takes place with ships like this once they're placed on the bottom. I think it's very, very possible that on this ship, in the summertime when the clear water's in, that there'll be Goliath grouper on the bottom and sailfish on the top.
It's a funny thing because there's a lot of people who have mixed feelings about artificial reefs and fish habitat. In my experience, all I've ever seen it do is really augment the habitat that it surrounds. Almost all artificial reefs are about 600% more prolific than the areas immediately around them. So in my experience, artificial reefs, regardless of where they come from, have been a place for fish habitat, a place for divers and fishermen to spend some time, and in general, from what I've seen, have really impacted the environment and the economy of the areas that they're located in a positive way.
Jose tours the USS Hoyt Vandenberg when Spanish Fly continues.
We're actually walking a place that we're going to get to dive. Over the years, we've dove a lot of wrecks, and we've dove fiberglass wrecks, we've dove wooden wrecks, and we've dove metal wrecks, and always to a point, there's something about the metal wrecks that attract faster coral growth and sponge growth, and that's really the first part of it. You know, it's not only the structure that attracts the fish that are seeking shelter, but it's also those first parts of the food chain.
Man, you can tell there's lots of people home down there, lots of fish around.
Yeah.
Look how clear though, huh? Hey, you see the anchor line all the way down. That's beautiful.
Yeah, we're right on the edge too. Like you see where this
The weed
grass line is. Like
Yeah.
inside, you see it's just a little dustier.
Yeah,
Right on this side, it's crystal clear.
Yeah.
Dark blue.
yeah.
If you anchor relatively close to it, or you drift close to it and you drop a jig down to the bottom, you have a chance at bottom fish, both snapper, groupers, also the almaco jacks that seem to favor, you know, that area close to the wreck. This is definitely a species that gathers around wrecks,
Well, you jigged him right in the nose.
right? If you anchor a little bit further away from it, you know, you start getting different species of fish that cruise around the periphery of the wreck. You know, the kingfish, the mackerel, things like that. Just a little guy. That's what you saw down there, just kind of playing.
Yeah, they're over the top of all these wrecks.
If you anchor yet even a little bit further away and chum back to it, you can really attract anything behind the boat, you know, and that includes the pelagics, the sailfish, kingfish, wahoos, tunas, that typically aren't necessarily found around artificial reefs, but I think gather there because of the amount of bait and life that there is associated with that structure. So it's amazing to me how you can almost dictate what species of fish you're going to catch by where you choose to anchor in relation to that artificial structure. That's got to be a crazy feeling for you, though, coming down to the wire after 13
I
years.
tell you, it's pretty cool, man. It
Not
really
bad,
is.
brother. Are they running you ragged?
It beat me like a rented mule.
A diver's going to have a field day with this thing.
The diver, the fisherman, you know, we're really thinking, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to think about, especially considering the way the ship's being prepared, to picture like Goliath grouper at the bottom and sailfish at the top in the summertime, you know? Because standing so tall in the water column with those great big webby dishes, they're going to hold a lot of bait.
Listen, you know, they're not only going to hold those pelagics and stuff, but you know, those big migratory schools of permit, they'll come, they're going to park on the superstructure, the
bring the
cobias, that kind
amberjacks,
of stuff.
yeah, bring them. Welcome aboard. This is another one of those spots where you can descend with nothing over your head 135 feet right into the ship. And there are big, huge rooms down there, right? However, you swim in, you got a whole other different situation.
Yeah.
When Spanish Fly returns, preparation is underway for the final journey of the USS Hoyt Vandenberg.
What other features are on here that kind of separate this from anything else that's out there?
The new radars run a dual range, so if you wanted to run a near range in buoy mode, so you don't run into stuff trying to get home, but you wanted to look farther out for weather, you can do that simultaneously now.
And can you have separate settings for each? That's awesome.
So now we've got our two radar screens.
Right.
We've got our dual range turned on.
Right.
We're going to set one to our long pulse, then we can come over here. We can set this one to our short pulse.
Dude, that's brilliant. You can see, like, you know, in this far off mode, this sailboat that's sitting right there, you can barely see it all. But when you got it in this mode with the near gain suppression off, that sailboat, which is that thing right there, right? And then there's the island here, right? But then on your further range, not only, you know, you can just barely see the sailboat, but you see the island crystal clear. The two markers on the other side of the island, right? One of the things that I always struggled with is, like, if I had it on a wide enough setting or range, you know, the buoys would disappear when they would get close, because on those further range, the close gain is suppressed, right? right? And now on this thing, now you can have 2 different gain settings for the 2 different ranges and have the you know, the best performance for each particular setting.
Right.
That's awesome. In March of 2007, the Vandenberg was withdrawn from the James River Naval Reserve Fleet on the St. James River in Virginia. After it spent 2 years there, it was towed to a shipyard in Norfolk, Virginia, all the way down to Key West. It went through storms just to get to Key West for its final preparations to be sunk about 6 miles south of the island.
I'll tell you what, Jose, a lot of people, you know, tried to kill us, and if we'd have quit, it would have been done.
Yeah.
You got something that you're doing that nobody can take away. That's cool. So no matter what happens, you know, I drop dead tomorrow, they can't take this
Right.
away
You did that.
from us or our friends,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And it's going to be here a lot longer than me.
Yeah.
And it's making a difference, right? Because that's my backyard. That's Key West, Florida, right? And that's in my backyard now.
Sweet sound of goodness. Joe, would you like them?
How do you keep from yelling and screaming when this is going on? Thank you.
I'm concentrating.
Okay, that's it. It's the concentration. Oh, yeah.
Doing good, man. You're doing good. I'm proud of you.
Awesome. Let's see if we get this guy into the boat. Come on, fish.
Take your time with it, buddy.
Come on, tuna.
Nice and slow. Slow, bring him. Bring him. Mr. Weatherby.
I knew these guys were out here.
Isn't that a
He
beautiful
looks
fish?
delicious.
He is delicious. You want him?
Oh, yeah. Let's have him for dinner.
All right. Well, seeing as you put a wreck down there so that he could find some bait around,
Yeah.
we'll keep him.
We're not going to take everyone.
There he goes. Nestled in the ice and ready for some sashimi later.
Yeah, well, that's
My
the
brother.
species for it.
for you.
That's fantastic.
Good for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, buddy.
The General Vandenberg is 522 feet long, and the ship's going to be sunk in 140 feet of water. That's 140 feet to the bottom and 40 feet to the top in the clear water south of the reef, right out here in the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary.
It went through a whole other process in Key West, the final cleaning, the blasters coming in, you know, the holes getting cut out in the ship in very strategic places so that when the blasts, you know, exploded below the waterline, the air had a place to vent, you know, and each compartment in that ship sunk properly so that it rested perfectly, you know, on the bottom right where it was supposed to be.
1, go.
Just to be involved in just the operations part of that whole process was an honor for me, number one. And then number two, it was just really amazing because you got a chance to get a little bit of insight into the details and the preparation, the communication challenges that it faced, you know, having that many different governmental enforcement agencies surrounding that ship and communicating so that everybody was doing the same things. The ships weren't bumping into each other, and helicopters and airplanes were staying out of each other's way. It was just a daunting undertaking to actually be right there, minutes away from being sunk.
When the Spanish Fly continues, a sinking ship finds a new home.
It's amazing to me how certain things get done, you know, and you think about the passion and the dedication that it took this one guy, right, to devote that long a period of his life and effort just to do this one thing, right? Joe was a catalyst that really got this whole process going, in that the ship was going to be cut up into pieces and sold overseas for scrap metal, much to the chagrin of a lot of the veterans.
I spoke to some of the veterans at a reunion that were on World War II. And I said, my name's Joe Wejebe and I'm here to sink your ship. And they went, boo. And I said, well, you know, we're planning on making it into a classroom and laboratory and tourist destination. But the other choice is you can go to Japan and get made into razor blades like her sister ship did. They said sink that son of a It was pretty cool.
We were in on the operations part of that ship. So in other words, we were inside the area where all the other spectator ships were able to be. You know, we were inside that inner circle. It's the ship right there. Coast Guard boat. That's one of the tugboats. It's going to be the second largest artificial reef in the world. It's a big event for everybody, especially for the Keys.
30-second count.
30-second count.
Tony, blocking my freaking view. I'm just here to watch a ship blow up.
Kind of exciting.
50-second count.
15 seconds. Ooh. Oh, that's so cool.
Hey, stay straight, baby. This is the port. Stay straight. Stay straight. Go. Stay straight. Come on, baby.
Good job, sir.
Oh, yeah.
Nice job.
Whoa, that's great.
13 years. In 40 seconds, it's gone.
1 minute 44.
Like we didn't have anybody in our pool that low.
I mean, how is Key West going to see the benefit of the ship?
Well, I think Key West has already been seeing the benefit of the ship. You know, all the attention that you guys are giving us, and as well as all the people that have come to see to work on the ship, inspect the ship, and all the people that came to see it sink. That's already started. Our process has already started. We think that the return on this investment will be very, very quick.
It was really quite an event to actually be there and be witness to this very historic, I think, event that happened, where you took this ship that had this long and illustrious career, and you've gotten it to a place where now it's going to start another part of its life cycle as, you know, a historic landmark for divers and fishermen south of Key West. For me, it's really a historic as well as an environmental event.
Next time on The Spanish Fly, we revisit the USS Hoyt Vandenberg in its new home as an artificial reef. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more on the USS Hoyt Vandenberg, log on to SpanishFlyTV.com.